First of all, before we get into the Rangers, did you get a chance to see or hear Molly Walker's interview? There you are, beautiful. There he is, the one and only
Hello,
John
sir.
Lab. Look at that pretty smile. Oh, look at that.
I told you I'd
So
do my hair, but I threw the hat on and changed my outfit
I
for
thought you
the
were gonna like
show.
do the feathers nice and be all pretty. That's okay. We got to
I
open
got the
door policy.
Fortnite gliders going.
We got the open door policy on ugly around here, Laz. Don't worry about it, pal. Hey, so here's what I want to ask you. Did you get a chance? I don't know. Maybe you're probably busy today, but did you get a chance to watch Molly Walker's interview with Rangers play-by-play voice Sam Rosen at all? If you
I
didn't
haven't
listen,
yet.
it's excellent.
I have the
It's so
tab opened
good.
up right now on my computer to watch later.
It's so good. It's really good. We're gonna play a clip a little bit later on. But as a dyed-in-the-wool Ranger guy, I don't want to spend too much time with the team, but we're gonna get there.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on Sam Rosen? Like, I don't know that we spend enough time talking about like announcers. Like, we're like our like voices and sounds are so related to our history. Like, whenever I watch the Buffalo Sabres, I think of Ted Darling. Sam Rosen's meant so much to so many people from so many different generations. It's kind of sad that he's got to call this team his swan song in the NHL. But when you hear the name Sam Rosen, what pops through your mind?
I hear Sam Rosen's voice more than my own parents. I mean, he's the voice of my entire life. What else can you say about
Yeah.
the guy? And honestly, for me, I think the biggest chill that I got when I first, broke into the industry and got a job and was able to sit in the press box, I'll never forget it. The Rangers were home against Toronto toward the end of the 2023 regular season, and I heard Sam Rosen say, "It's a power play goal for the first time in my actual eardrum and
Oh,
not through the
wow.
TV." And I was like, wow, this is so cool. Like, that saying in itself is something that I honestly think even when Sam does retire, there should be a sound of Sam that plays in the Garden when
It's a
the
power
Rangers
play
score in the
goal.
power play. Yeah.
That's an excellent idea. That's a
I think the
fantastic
Sabres had
idea,
done something with
lads.
Rick Jeanneret, right? Didn't they do
Uh,
something? I know he
they
passed, but
Oh, he's no longer with us, but I'm not sure
yeah.
whether they maybe for the in-house would they have
Yeah.
done something with Rick? Someone in the chat's going to know, and is going to
Mhm.
let us know that I it's interesting too because we all have those moments of like, holy smokes, I can't believe I'm in this privileged position. I remember doing rinkside for Hockey Night for a couple of years, and then one time I was waiting to do a walk-off interview with Andrei Markov, and Mr. and Mrs. Beliveau would always sit behind the Montreal Canadiens bench, and I'm a huge, was before he passed, obviously, a
Mhm.
huge fan of Jean Beliveau and his history and his place in the game. I don't think we talk enough about Beliveau, but so at the intermission, Mr. and Mrs. Beliveau would always, leave and, go get a refreshment before they came back. And so I'm standing there like dumb, goofy, CBC guy
Yeah.
waiting for Andrei Markov to towel off and come off so we can do like a 30-second interview that we may or may not even take to air. And I saw Jean Beliveau walking towards me and I'm like, oh, wow, this is like the coolest thing in the world.
Mhm.
And he's got me close and I said, hello, Mr. Beliveau. And he said, salut, Jeff. And I went, how does he know my name?
Yeah, that's so sick.
like Sean
Yeah.
Beliveau knows my name. This is the coolest thing in the world. Like, I don't care about this
Yeah.
Andre Markov interview. Like, I just want to quit the industry now because like it's not going to get better than Jean Beliveau saying "Salut, Jeff" in that deep basso profundo voice of his. But
Mhm.
anyhow, I think the question we're all wondering about with you is how you doing?
I mean, professionally, I'll speak from the professional side and fan side.
Yeah.
Professionally, I got to say it's very entertaining because every channel, every show, every network I listen to, everyone's talking New York Rangers. So that for me,
Yeah.
I find interesting professionally. As a fan, beyond frustrating. And it's almost at the point where I'm not even like talking to friends or people who text me personally about the
Yeah.
Rangers because I'm just so sick and tired of it. But from a professional angle, there's no team I'd rather talk about than the team that I love and root for.
What's the? I'm always curious about the city vibe. Like I just mentioned Montreal a couple of seconds ago, and one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I always tell people you have to have the Montreal Saturday, not just Saturday night experience, is you go to Montreal on a Saturday night game day and you go down the cobblestone streets of old Montreal, or you go to cafes or restaurants or bars, and the whole day, like everyone's just talking about the game. Like the whole thing builds up to 7:06 when the puck dropped at the Bell Center.
Mhm.
So it's not just about 7:01 the lights drop and Coldplay hits and goes to the Forum and all that stuff. What is the city doing with this?
Well, this city is interesting because there's so many other teams too that can distract you, right? Like
Yeah,
Montreal, you just really have the Canadians. Like we got the Knicks, we got the Islanders, the Devils. I honestly consider here, Jets, Giants. Like there's so many
yeah.
different teams in season right now. but all of them suck pretty much. So it's everyone it's everyone just like suffering together. Maybe outside of the Devils fans, if they're
Yeah.
across the river. And the Knicks have actually been really good, so I will give credit to the Knicks. But to its core, New York City is a Knicks city, and the New York Knicks dominate this city. So when the Rangers are bad and the Knicks are good, it's not as bad. The years that the Rangers were good and the Knicks were bad, it made it feel a little bit better that the Knicks were bad. But I would never put New York and Montreal at the same level hockey-wise. That said, come springtime, when the Rangers are in the playoffs, there are Ranger jerseys everywhere in New York City, and it is unbelievable. I mean, I'll never forget it. I went to Game 7 of the Penguin series in 2022 as a fan because I wasn't working in the league yet. And it was a Sunday night. I stayed out at the bar across the street, Stout, till 3 a.m. And I walked 30 blocks to my friend's apartment because my phone died and I couldn't get an Uber. And I high-fived this guy on East 8th and 1st Ave wearing a Ranger jersey at 3 a.m. Like, let's go, like 3 a.m. on a Sunday. Like, that's the kind of stuff when the Rangers are good, it's magic. But when they're bad, it's just, there's still other things to do here that distract you from that.
Okay, I want to ask you. Let's get up. If you have anything else to share about the Rangers, I know that Monday to Thursday, 9 to 10 is kind of therapy sometimes for you to get a lot of. If there's anything else you want to add about the Rangers, jump now because I want to dovetail to Minnesota and your Chris Kelleher interview.
Okay, well, I actually really liked what you and Shana were talking about stats wise, and I wanted to throw something at you from a stat perspective with the Rangers and honestly just in general in the NHL. And admittedly, I did botch this on Nesson the other night on Wednesday night. I was talking about Coach Carvel, who's the head coach of UMass, and how he came up with his own analytic when I was in college called a heavy shift. So every day after a game, we'd have a packet in the locker room. We'd go look at the packet. First page I would look at was my heavy shifts, heavy shift for, heavy shift against. On the broadcast, I accidentally said heavy shit. So that was my own mistake. And I'll probably laugh about that forever. But
please tell me that's on YouTube somewhere, please, Laz.
BU scored probably 7 seconds after I said it. So the clip is on BU Hockey Twitter. And I will send that to you later if you want. But
appreciate that. Thank you.
I think if there was a stat in the NHL for heavy shifts, and to me and to Coach Carvel, a heavy shift is when you have 30 to 40 seconds of offensive zone pressure, you get 2 or 3 chances at the net. You get your retrievals, you get the puck from low to high, similar just like offensive zone cycling and constant pressure. And I think if you looked at that stat right now, and obviously it doesn't exist right now in the NHL, I think the Rangers would be dead last in heavy shifts against and dead last in heavy shifts for. So while they might look good at 5-on-5 with the chances that they generate, expected goals and whatnot, because they're good off the rush, they're poor defending. I think they're the worst team against the rush in the NHL. And then once they do defend the rush, they're stuck in their own end and they have a hard time getting out. So to me, that stat, which I find super interesting because it's more telling of what's happening in the actual game and what lines are really creating pressure and then handling pressure, I think that'd be interesting to see as far as the Rangers go.
I would love that, and I'm glad you mentioned expected goals and expected saves. There are some people, and again, like we're dealing with public models, not private models. Like this is just the information we have to go on. There are so many people in analytics departments around the NHL that I'll speak to who will always say the same thing. Be really careful with expected goals. They talk about how much further advanced like their own team private models are. They're always like, grain. But I keep saying like anytime you want to make those public, like I'm sure everybody in the analytics community would love it. All we're trying to do is measure the games and try to figure out what's working and what isn't. And it's like, look, they always keep saying, don't get too married to expected goals and expected saves. Like it is somewhat valuable, but we're past it now. What did you think, by the way, of the idea of hits? And you should only count a hit if it forces a change of possession. Otherwise, it's just body contact.
No, I agree. It's just a bunch of guys running around with their heads cut off, essentially, right? If you're not really impacting the play. I mean, there's also times where a guy throws a hit unnecessarily and the puck goes the other way and it's in the back of your net. Like there's one play I can think of, Artemi Panarin against the Winnipeg Jets this year, goes in, stick in the air, gets a piece of the body. I forgot who made the pass. Kyle Connor's going the other way because Artemi's stick wasn't down, and it's 2-on-1. It's in the back of the net. Like, why are you going to throw a hit there? It makes no sense.
Yep, it's interesting. Okay, a couple of things I want to ask you, just from a player's point of view, and the hits are one of them. The other one, and I don't know why I just started writing this weekend, and I got in this whole thing about bag skates and how Matt Nickel is a good buddy of mine. I've known Matty forever. First met him was Leaps and Strength and Conditioning coach, and his whole thing was always like, you're killing your team by bag skating them. Specifically, if you bag skate before the practice, you're just teaching your team to practice slow, and then they'll play slow. But I was talking to another coach last week who said, look, like ice is really expensive. I'm talking like Johnny, like we're going to like youth hockey, like minor hockey in Canada, youth hockey in the United States. I'm sure you were bag skated as a kid. Oh, we had a poor effort. Okay, down and back, Minnesota Mile, whatever it's going to be, like you're doing it. And this one coach I talked to said, like, like ice is so expensive, like hundreds and hundreds. Why would you have like an expensive bag skate? The stairs are right there. Just have your team run
I've had
stairs.
both.
Well, I'm sure you have. But
I've done a bag skate into stairs after.
Oh, dude. Well, that's vicious. Yeah. What kind of game did you guys have? But you see what I mean? Like ice is so expensive. Like I don't know that it should be used. Like that's like a $700 punishment for some teams.
Yeah, but it's the message that it sends, right?
Stairs will send the same message. Stairs will
yes and no, but it also depends. Like, listen, I talk about Coach Carvel a lot, and I think one of the good things that he did in our practices was he would make us go, like, I believe the start of a Monday practice, he would read out who took a penalty over the weekend, and if you took the penalty, you'd be on the board. So it's just boards to boards. So if you took a penalty, you go down and back, and then the whole team would go down and back as well. So you'd be doing it twice. So I remember there was one weekend I took 3 penalties in the 2 games that we played. So I had to go down and back. Then me and the team would go down and back. Then I would go down and back. Then me and the team would go down and back. Then I would go down and back. Then me and the team. Like it just kind of makes it creep into your mind. Like, hey, I'm going to be more careful next time I'm using my stick in the offensive zone. I am not going to hook a guy. I'm not going to trip a guy because I do not want to get bag skated on Monday. And I do not want to put my team through that either.
Did Coach Carvel distinguish between bad penalties and good penalties?
No, that was the one flaw I had in the system, but it's his own messaging, but it worked. Like, it was in the back of your mind of, I don't want to punish the guys on Monday. Like, don't be selfish and take a lazy penalty.
Chris Kelleher, I love this interview today. I know that you and him go back not too long, but know each other.
No, summer. Yeah.
Just the summer. So, I mean, I loved it. What was it? One of the things that my main takeaway from it was the conversation that you and Colby had with them about the development of players. And I know I've talked a lot about the Buffalo Sabres and experience and rushing to the NHL, and you see the effects of it right now, where it's a very measured approach by the Minnesota Wild, which is interesting because they've had this $14 million cap hole. You would think if any team, they would be the ones like rushing guys to the NHL. Like, we need decent players on the ice here. We're skating with $14 million tied behind our backs. That was my main takeaway from it. Like, I found the whole thing fascinating, but if I pinpoint one thing, that's what it was, how they developed the Marco Rossi's, Jesper Wallstadts, David Juracek is the next in that line. What did you take away from it? And I encourage people to check it out either on YouTube or Spotify, Apple Pods, wherever you get your pods.
Yeah, well, I think with Minnesota and with that $14 million cap hold, like you mentioned, I think their biggest thing right now is staying competitive, right? Because they're not in this rebuild window of any sort. And they're also, I think in years past, maybe understood it about themselves that they might not be cup contenders, right? I think they've always wanted to be competitive and stay in that mix, knowing that this is something that was holding them back a little bit. And then once this is now out of their organization, this little cap hole, as you call it, I think it's almost a bit of a fresh start, and you can almost put yourself more in a contention window. And listen, I'm not saying that the Minnesota Wild aren't trying to win the Stanley Cup every year. That's obviously the goal of every team. But I think when you are in management and you know what you have in your organization, you have to be realistic and set realistic expectations as well. And I think Minnesota, because they have a guy like Kaprizov and because Gustafson's playing so well, and they have the younger guys like Boldy and Rossi and whatever, I think giving those guys experience, but not giving them too much experience and maybe putting too much pressure on them is what's benefiting them way more than, let's say, Jeff, I know you love talking about them, a team like Buffalo who has put those young guys in the NHL and have said, hey, we need to make the playoffs now. It's a different type of pressure, and it affects your mental psyche in different ways as well. And I think giving a player that room to breathe and room to grow, and knowing that we're not counting on you right now for organizational accolades, it almost just like lets them breathe and lets them play hockey and only worry about hockey.
Okay, let me finish with this one. I asked Shayna this question. I'm going to ask you, but she got to choose from 32 teams. You get to choose from 31.
Okay.
You know the one I'm thinking of. Which is the most interesting team to you right now in the NHL? You get to choose from 31 teams, not the obvious New York Rangers.
Interesting team.
I mean, it's just subjective. Like there's no right or wrong answer.
Obviously, I think the other option would be like Nashville, but I think that's too easy. I want to say the Calgary Flames, honestly.
Really?
They're a team that I think they're a team that nobody expected anything good from this season, and they've been quite the pleasant surprise, and they're competitive. And you would think with Craig Conroy there this year that they would most likely be selling, right, and trying to start that next chapter in their organization, since everything has kind of been a little iffy since Matthew Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau left, and this team's winning hockey games. So, like, what do you do, right? Like, can you start selling pieces away, or do you actually believe what you have and try to add pieces to the puzzle and maybe go for the playoffs in a city that, let's face it, I don't know why I'm saying let's face it, but let's realize they love hockey there. So I don't think any fan would want to go through a rebuild, but the Calgary Flames, I think everyone expected them to drop off, and they've still, while they haven't been as hot maybe lately as they were at the start of the year,
true,
they're still right there in it, and I think that's something that is not getting enough appreciation. Like that Kadri goal the other night, oh my God, it looked like Kenny Wu and Mighty Ducks, right? Like it was insane. But because Calgary might not be such a sexy team right now, the love isn't really there.
Interesting.
Try to go off the board,
No. Hey, listen, I'm anchored here in Canada. Like, you're never going to go wrong picking a Canadian team. You could have said, Vancouver, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto, and, everyone around Nation Network would have said, Laz is bigging up the Canadian teams. Check them out.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent stuff, bud. Look forward to Morning Cup of Hockey tomorrow, 9 o'clock Eastern on our Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. That's right here. Or if you're listening to the podcast, wherever you get your pods, folks, check out Morning Cup of Hockey. Thanks, Laz. Stay off.
You're the best.
Stay off bridges, okay? We're concerned about
okay.
Staying off bridges. Jonny Lazarus,
Thank you.
Player turned broadcaster, going to be a star in this industry. If you enjoyed that video, and we certainly hope that you do, please hit the subscribe button right there here at Daily Faceoff. I will put this lineup up against any hockey lineup anywhere. It all gets underway at 9 o'clock Eastern with Morning Cup of Hockey. That is Jonny Lazarus. That is Colby Cohen. Then at noon, it's DFO Live. And then 3 o'clock Eastern, The Sheet. Get caught up on everything in hockey.